gavel. Good morning and welcome to the Economic Development hearing this morning. Today is Wednesday, March 15th at 10 a.m. in room 423. In order to allow as many people to testify as possible, there will be a 2-minute time limit per testifier. Please know that committee members have received and read your testimony, so if you'd like to stand on your written testimony, that would be appreciated by the committee. We're continuing to use a hybrid system with Zoom and live testifiers, so I'd like to ask members on Zoom to please keep yourself muted with video off while waiting to testify and after your testimony is complete. Please avoid any profanity and from using any trademark or copyrighted images in your background. All right, and with that, we will start with Senate Bill 113, Senate Draft 2, relating to the labeling of products. Clarifies that calculations to determine whether an item labeled Hawaii made or made in Hawaii has met the requirement that at least 51% of the wholesale value of the product is added by production within the state, including operating and overhead expenses incurred and spent within the state. Appropriates funds to promote and develop the Made in Hawaii brand. First up, we have Department of Agriculture with comments.
Good morning, Chair Holt, Vice Chair Lamsao, and committee members. Morris Ata, Deputy for the Department of Agriculture. Department will stand on its testimony for offering comments. But just wanted to note that there is a distinction between the two labeling programs under DBED and DOA, and we wanted to make sure that we kept it separately, and we would prefer that this measure not apply to the DOA program. That's primarily what our comment is. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, we have DBED in support.
Hello, Chair, Vice Chair, committee members, Dennis Ling for DBED. DBED stands with its written testimony in support of this bill.
Thank you very much. And next we have Retail Merchants of Hawaii with comments on Zoom.
Not present.
Not present. That's all the people who signed up to testify in person or on Zoom. Is there anybody else wishing to testify on this measure? Seeing none, members, are there any questions? I do have a question for Department of Ag.
Yes.
There seems to be a little bit of confusion in the measure between Made in Hawaii and Hawaii Made. And you said you prefer if it not apply to you folks?
I think, the gist of our testimony is our Quality Assurance Division is tasked with enforcing the Made in Hawaii with Aloha brand that we oversee under Chapter 46, I believe, yeah. And incorporating the overhead expenses component to this program would make it kind of challenging for our department. And given there's a distinction between types of goods that are covered by the different statutes, and that's primarily the reason. We do make a comment about maybe clarifying the use of the term Hawaii made versus made in Hawaii, because under the statute it's a defined term. So that's the comment that we threw in there just as a clarification measure.
And it's kind of a bigger picture. It's a little bit confusing with Hawaii Made and Made in Hawaii. At one point, do you see where we could consolidate the two maybe? And
it would make sense. Maybe we use all of those terms that kind of define what Hawaii products are. Right now, because they're statutorily defined, we have to be very careful about the verbiage that we're using.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Any further questions, members? Okay, seeing none, we're moving on to next measure, Senate Bill 667, Senate Draft 2, related to nonprofit organizations, clarifies the application of the general excise tax law with regard to gross income derived from unrelated trade or business activities of nonprofit organizations. First up, we have Department of Tax with comments.
Good morning, Chair, Vice Chair, and members of the committee. My name is Shauna Ho, and I'm here on behalf of the Department of Taxation. Thank you for the opportunity to testify. The department stands on its written testimony providing comments on this measure, and I'm available to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, we have Hano in support on Zoom.
Hi, good morning, Chair Holt, Vice Chair Amosao, I'm Lisa Mariama with HANO, Hawaii Alliance of Nonprofit Organizations. And we're in strong support, of course, for this Senate bill coming over to you. And there are many good reasons to support this particular measure, but I'll just highlight really very quickly three reasons. This would allow the state of Hawaii to conform with federal law, and it would make it a lot simpler for nonprofits to file and for their accounting purposes. This also is currently in its current state of the general excise tax is a double taxation on the nonprofit sector because we do pay sales tax on goods and services that we use or apply in our fundraiser events, and then we are again taxed on our gross revenue. So this would eliminate that double taxation effect. And then lastly, of course, and most importantly, the savings that we would be able to incur from having this exemption would go directly toward mission to strengthening our communities. So again, strongly support. Thank you for the ability to testify, and happy to take questions. Mahalo.
Thank you very much. Next, we have Hawaii Youth Services Network in support on Zoom.
Aloha, Chair, members of the committee. I'm Judith Clark, Executive Director of Hawaii Youth Services Network, a statewide coalition of youth-serving agencies. We are in very strong support of this measure. We echo all of the things that Lisa Maruyama from Hano just said. We would like to point out that this will benefit literally thousands of nonprofit organizations that provide critically needed services to our vulnerable children, youth, families, and kapuna. By allowing the revenues from fundraising events and other unrelated business income to avoid taxation, it will increase the funds available to provide these services and potentially be a savings to the state in Hawaii because these agencies will be less dependent on state contracts and grants to provide services. Thank you for this opportunity to testify.
Thank you very much. Next, we have Tax Foundation of Hawaii with comments.
Yes, good morning, Chair, members of the committee. This is Jade McMillan for the Tax Foundation of Hawaii. We will stand on our written comments submitted on the measure, just noting that this bill differs from the one vetoed last year, specifically to reduce or eliminate the possibility of any unintended consequences. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. That's all the people signed up to testify. Just would like to note that we have dozens of nonprofits in support of this measure. Anybody else wishing to testify? Members, do we have any questions? Yes. Rep. Chico.
Good morning. This question is for Lisa at Hano. In your testimony and from the mentioned by the Tax Foundation of Hawaii, for those of us that weren't here last year, are you able to kind of briefly recap I'm championing this bill, this important measure last year, and how the issues raised by Department of Taxation would be addressed in the SD2 version of this bill?
Right. So thank you, Rep. Chica. We basically made the modifications for the concerns that were addressed through the veto last year. It is reflected in the Senate Draft 1 and Senate Draft 2 version, actually. And it was a technical language that actually allowed the state tax director at the time to worry that there was a tax loophole that would sweep in people unintendedly, organizations unintendedly, to be exempted from tax or taxed, basically. Their income would be taxable when they're currently not. And so we actually fixed that technical language that was a cause for question and concern. And we feel like the cleaning up of that language in this current vehicle basically addresses that question.
Thank you. Mahalo, Chair.
Thank you. Majority Leader?
Hi, I have a question for Mrs. Ho from the Tax Department. Thanks for being here. I have a question. Does the SD2 version of this bill address the concerns that were raised by the governor in his veto message last year?
I don't believe so, no.
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 Okay. What could be done to address the concern? Because I do not see a carve-out for fundraising specifically, which is the purpose of this bill.
Correct.
Nor do I see a definition for fundraising.
The department agrees with that. That's the issue we have with the current
So if
language.
those two things were done and articulated, then would it be okay?
I would have to take that back
Yeah,
to the department.
okay, right.
But that's the issue we have. Yeah, the way it's written now is the same as the one that was vetoed.
And
So
I-
it needs to be changed.
Yeah, so if we want to support this measure,
Mhm.
because of the good work that our nonprofits do in our state, then is that something you guys could work on with Hano to come up with some language that would help to address the concern so we don't go through the same veto process again?
Right. I can bring that back to the department, to the director.
Thank you.
Yeah? Thank you.
Can I ask a question,
Sure can.
Chair?
Yep.
Mr. Toyofuku, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members. Bob Toyofuku, I represent Hano. And just to clarify the situation I think that Lisa was talking about, last year, the bill was drafted by a very competent attorney at Cade Schutte, the law firm. And there was no objection to the bill throughout the entire session until the day before conference ended. And the tax director raised an issue at that time, right? And the Cade Schutte attorney, as well as the tax foundation director, disagreed with that interpretation. We had a meeting with the director explaining why the bill last year did not was not defective. But what we did was they amended the bill this year, which is before you, which I think seemed to satisfy at least last year's tax director. And as far as I know for this year, because I talked to the director, I don't think there's a problem. But anyway, I just want to, and so, I just wanted to mention that
Yeah.
to clarify it.
Thank you very
Thank you.
much for that background. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Any further questions on this measure? Seeing none, we'll be moving on. Senate Bill 756, Senate Draft 1, relating to economic development, establishes the Access to Local Food Act to allow cottage food operations to sell cottage food products under certain conditions upon receiving a permit from the Department of Health. First up, we have the Department of Agriculture.
Good morning, Chair, committee members, Morris Ata for the department. The department will stand on its testimony supporting the intent of the measure. But the gist of our comments is that, there are, I guess, food safety issues and health issues that I guess will be addressed with the Department of Health through a permitting process. So we will defer to the Department of Health for those issues. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, we have Department of the Attorney General with comments.
Good morning, Chair Holt, Vice Chair Lamaso, and members of the committee. My name is Wade Hargrove. I'm a Deputy Attorney General. I'm here for the Attorney General's office. We just had some observations about the drafting, some consistency issues. Some of the terms used suggest things that I don't think are fully fleshed out in this draft. An example of that is the use of the terminology, a term of art really, direct sale, versus references to sales to third parties via the internet even. That's of course very different from a hand-to-hand direct to the consumer of the product from the producer of the product, which I think some components of the bill envision. Highlighting the problematic nature of those inconsistencies is page 10, where it talks about potentially hazardous food versus non-potentially hazardous food. Of course, in the food industry, potentially hazardous are those things that require time, temperature control. They make that distinction currently in the Department of Health's rules because of the heightened concern related to public safety when producers of food need a knowledge base commensurate with the production of potentially hazardous food versus those foods that are non-potentially hazardous, where there's much less concern for foodborne outbreak, foodborne illness, that sort of thing. The second issue is just the use of the word registration. It appears to be possibly inadvertent, but it speaks, the bill's draft right now speaks to permitting by the department, and there's a reference obliquely to registration, and of course, generally speaking, registration and permitting are legally fundamentally different in the sense that you apply for a permit. Registration is just kind of putting the agency on notice of your existence. It's a way to put an organization, an entity, a business on the map, if you will, the regulatory map, whereas permitting is that request formally to be allowed to do something you wouldn't otherwise be allowed to do. Duration of the permit, of course, is also somewhat ambiguous. There's a reference to permits being unencumbered and therefore being allowed to be continue being permitted, and the term unencumbered in this current draft is undefined. So thank you very much. I'll be available for any questions.
Thank you very much. Next, we have Department of Health in opposition.
Hello, Chair. Peter O'Toole for the Department of Health. I'm the program manager for the Food Safety Branch. We're standing in opposition of this bill. There are many various communicable disease dangers, as well as inattention or intentional adulteration in a private home with prescription drugs, chemicals, cleaners that typically you would not see in a restaurant. So we have a lot of concerns, and our whole mission is to prevent illness and hazards and not to address them after the fact. Thanks a lot. I'll be available for any questions.
Thank you very much. That's all the people signed up to testify. Is there anybody else wishing to testify on this measure? Seeing none, members, any questions? Seeing none, we'll be moving on to our last measure, Senate Bill 1577, Senate Draft 1, relating to the Department of Commerce and Consumer Affairs. Requires the Department of Commerce and Consumer Affairs to make all business registration applications available online. Requires all applications to contain certain contact information. First up, we have DCCA in opposition.
Morning, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. My name is Rainey Nakamura Watanabe, and I'm here on behalf of the Director of the Department of Commerce and Consumer Affairs. The department stands on its written testimony in opposition. I'm available for any questions the committee may have. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and we have comments from DBED.
Aloha, Chair, Vice Chair, committee members, Dennis Ling with DBED. DBED offers comments on this bill. Basically, sharing of the contact information would really help us with business outreach for our constituents on our programs and projects and activities. So thank you.
Thank you very much. So we have signed up to testify. Anybody else wishing to testify on this measure? Seeing none, members, any questions? Seeing none, we will recess for decision making. Okay, welcome back to Economic Development hearing for decision making. First up, we have Senate Bill 113 relating to the labeling of products. Noting the concerns of the Department of Agriculture, we're going to be removing Section 2 and defecting the date to June 30th, 3000. Members, any questions or concerns? Seeing none, Vice Chair for the vote.
We are now voting on SB 113. Recommendation of the chair is to pass with amendments. Chair and Vice Chair vote aye. Member Hasi Burdick, excuse. Member Kong, excuse. Member Lachika,
Aye.
Member Nakamura,
Aye.
Member Quinlan,
Aye.
Member Parrott.
Aye.
Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you very much. Senate Bill 667, Senate Draft 2 relating to nonprofit organizations. Noting some conflicting opinions on the measure, we will note in the committee report to further work on this between the nonprofits and the Department of Taxation, but we will be moving this bill forward also with a defective date of June 30th, 3000. Members, any questions? Seeing none, Vice Chair for the vote.
We are now voting on SB 667, noting the excused absence of Member Hasi Burdick and, a recommendation of the chair is to pass with amendment, noting the excused absence of Member Hasi Burdick and Member Kong. Anyone voting with reservations? Anyone voting with, voting no? Noting none. All members vote aye, Chair. Your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you very much. Senate Bill 756, Senate Draft 1. Noting this is a worthy cause, there are too many concerns that could get people sick in the community. We're going to be deferring this measure in hopes that the proponents can work with the Department of Health for a better measure coming back next year. And last on our agenda, Senate Bill 1577, Senate Draft 1, relating to the Department of Commerce and Consumer Affairs. We're going to be moving this bill forward with a defective date of June 30th, 3000. Members, any questions? See none, Vice Chair for the vote.
Voting on SB 1577, recommendation of the chair is to pass with amendments. Any members voting with reservations? Any members voting no? All members vote aye, Chair. Your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you, members. We are adjourned.